another reason why the phone contract is so valuable, because you can go back to it later and say, hey, remember you agreed that you wouldn't download a new app unless you showed me and I said, oh yeah, you want to download the Target app? Okay, fine. You want to download the Disneyland app? That's fine. You know, whatever it is, but that you run it by us first. Today we are pulling back the curtain on the Kunkel family home.
Bum, bum, bum. It's time to expose Erin and her wicked ways. Is that what we're going to call this episode?
No, exposing Erin.
Exposing Erin's
and her
wicked
ways as a mother.
Hey, that might be clickable. Clickbaity right there.
No one thinks I'm a wicked mother. I hope not. Well, anyway, so today we are going to pull back the curtain.
You see that little bit of mom guilt that snuck in there? I hope not.
And with the last episode, we talked about this issue of technology, phones, screens, social media, and kids, and how the evidence for how this is damaging our kids is becoming so overwhelming that the schools and the government are no longer ignoring this. They're starting to say stuff as well. So we thought, okay, we've actually been juggling and dealing with and fighting our children on phones and social media stuff as long as it's been around, because we've been parents for almost 30 years now.
And let's be clear, the fighting with some of our kids, there's only been a few of our kids. A couple of our kids who struggle with sin a little bit more than the other ones, who have struggled with phone addictions. Not all of our kids are as bad as the other ones. I just want to make sure. I want people to. Are you
gonna name? Or
I'm naming this episode. You said we're pulling back the curtain, so this episode I'm naming names.
Not on our children.
Oh, we don't name names with our own children.
Stay neutral in how you describe things. Okay,
that's impossible. I have my favorites.
Oh my gosh. So we thought we would take you through what we have done with our kids when it comes to smartphones and social media and how we've navigated it. And as I said, we've been parents for a long time, and so when the phone thing started to become an issue, our oldest daughter, who's now about to turn 30, was in 5th or 6th grade, right, when it was starting to ask for a phone.
Probably 6th grade.
Did I say when it was starting to ask for a phone?
Yeah. Are you trying to use...
I'm trying to be so neutral.
Are you trying to use its preferred pronouns?
I'm not even saying it's human.
It's going by it, they. What are their pronouns?
Okay, when this child was 5th or 6th grade, but I remember this stage with her and her saying, "Mom, everyone's getting a phone." And I said, "Well, why on earth would you need a phone?" And she started to give some reasons. And so one was, "Well, I'll call you when I get out of school." And I said, "Well, I know when you get out of school and I'm here every day. So problem solved. You don't need a phone." And then she said, "Well, Mom, what if I get late out of basketball or early?" And I said, "Well, then you'll sit there and wait like you always have and you'll be just fine." And so the reasons didn't sink in too deep. But of course, when she was asking for a phone, she was asking for, it was either flip or the text pad ones. Remember those phones? So smartphones weren't even a thing for kids when we started to have to fight this whole everyone has phones, why can't I kind of thing. So we've made some mistakes along the way. We've had to figure it out.
I'm glad that you admit that, honey.
Like all parents have. I mean, you probably have made more mistakes, but we have made some mistakes when it came to phones and social media and how to navigate it and what's a good age. And of course, when we were starting the journey and it was all brand new, there wasn't a lot of research that there is now today that we talked about in the first episode on this topic last week. So,
well, with our oldest daughter, I think part of one of the things we learned through experience
and failure and tears and grounding and having to take the phone away.
And that's not even talking about what we went through with her.
Oh my gosh.
It was, oh, here's the phone. And, oh, you can just, we just kind of gave that to her without a lot of boundaries, without a lot of communication up front.
Yeah, because you get the phone, and so you're like, okay, you can have a phone now,
and whatever that phone can do, you can kind of do with it.
Yeah,
and we just, we learned the hard way, because it was the phone, but then it was texting, and it was some, not social media, but there were some other things that,
well, didn't she started with a not smartphone,
right?
With what they call a dumb phone now,
right? So there was the texting part, but there was also, you could still capture, I think, some video on that.
Oh yeah.
And then there was social media at that time. So even though it wasn't on your phone, there was Facebook. And then there was, it wasn't Zoom. It was the thing that was prior. Oh, Skype. Remember Skype?
Oh yeah.
And so we just kind of, with the phone, kind of gave her all access to all that stuff. And so this is, I think I guess this is confession, right? This is how we learned the hard way. It was like, okay, here you go. Now you're ready. Or we're giving you this. So I guess you get all this other stuff. And that was a mess. Mm-hmm. And what we learned through that is that before we ever give a device or a social media platform or any piece of technology, the first thing that has to be agreed upon are boundaries. Mm-hmm. You do that up front. So
you do that up front if you want to cut down on tears and arguing. And
yes, your tears in particular, and also the kids' tears. So what we learned, which I guess we already knew, but again, here it's a new area. Technology is this new area you're navigating. It's like, hey, communicate expectations beforehand. Get as much of the expectations out on the table beforehand. Come to some agreements, and that will really help save you a lot of headache. And when it comes to technology now, when it comes to screens and social media, I mean, it's absolutely essential that there are agreed upon boundaries between parent and child. So we thought it might be helpful to just kind of go through a little bit of the smartphone contract that we developed for our kids. And this is actually not our unique innovation. I saw an article online. This is, probably a decade ago. And it was entitled, "To My 13-Year-Old, An iPhone Contract from Your Mom with Love." And it was written by Janelle Burley Hoffman. And it was clever.
Yeah, it was so good.
It was very funny. So I took some of the wording exactly from her. Mm-hmm. I tweaked it a little bit on some other places, but she had some great lines and added humor into it, I think, to give it some, I don't know, levity and just, so it's not just rule.
You will do this, child.
And I'm okay with saying that to my kids. You will do this, child, right? There is a good part of, hey, you got to obey. You got to obey the rules.
But if you have a kid who's old enough to have a smartphone, your posture should be in all of this. This is the boundary we're going to put on it, and this is why. That's right. And that's where I think this contract, we try to add some of the why. Mm-hmm.
And okay, so the way we do this in the Kunkel family, right, is, and this is ideal. And of course, we've honed this through the years with each kid.
It comes in handy to have several kids, so you can hone things as you go along.
So you can practice on the older ones.
This is actually an episode
up big time, like you have done multiple times, honey. And so then I've been able to come in, pick up the pieces, clean it up, hone it. And then
I just get to learn from you. It's just so great. But this is
okay. Props for that. That was biting sarcasm.
Oh my
there.
gosh.
And I loved it.
But this is actually an episode where we're encouraging having lots of kids because you'll learn as you go. Yeah. By the time our 5th kid, I mean, we've figured a lot of things out.
Yeah, we got it dialed in. That kid's going to be perfect.
Uh-oh. But we apparently haven't learned enough.
The problem is we've had to spend literally, I think, thousands of dollars for therapy for the older kids.
Oh my gosh.
So it's been,
Okay, so we've learned some things along the way. We've honed this contract. But here are some of the keys that we've found that are important to have in the contract.
Oh, you want to okay, well, before we even get into the contract, we just want to make sure we communicate that this is you get this in place before you ever buy that thing.
Oh, for sure.
So now some parents out there who are listening are they're going to be bummed because they're going to say, I've already given it to my kid. I just gave it to my kid, a month ago for their birthday. Or, hey, my high schoolers had this for years now. Yes, that's difficult, but it's not impossible to pull it back.
Nope, we did it. We did it.
We would encourage you, even if you're already in the midst of this, and bring your kid into the discussion. Mm-hmm. Say, hey, we were reading. Don't blame the Maven Parent Podcast.
Yeah,
okay?
Do not say Maven.
Yeah, don't say Maven. We've had parents who have told us have made comments about how their kids don't like that they listen to our podcast.
Like they'll hear it playing in the background, and their kids will say, "Oh no,
that means
are you going to do something
to me?" Who are these?
Okay, so don't blame Maven. Blame Jonathan Haidt.
Blame Jonathan Haidt. Read The Anxious Generation. Then you tell your kid, hey, I read The Anxious Generation. We don't want you to be anxious. We don't want you to harm yourself. So we're going to institute a contract. And you can get your kids' feedback on it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So before you get that device, now if you haven't already given your kid that contract or that device, hey, great. All right.
Actually, if you have kids that don't have phones yet, then our advice for that is put it off.
Don't.
As long as possible.
Yes.
Put it off. Just keep
delay as long as possible.
Keep delaying. Do whatever you can, because it is very difficult to navigate once that thing is invited into your child's life. And like we said on the previous podcast, any of us who have kids that have phones know that things changed the moment the phones came in. We know it did.
And look, so that's where our son, when he was 7, he didn't get his first smartphone till he was 17.
Yeah, actually,
so we were able to
hold his 18th birthday.
We were able to hold off there. So it's possible. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, so you do this beforehand. You can use our smartphone contract as a template. So we're going to put the link for you to get this and download this. We're going to put it in the descriptions on the different podcast platforms, on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, we're going to put the link in there. So you can go to Maven virtual training page or our virtual training page that has the free downloads. And we have put a copy of our kid's smartphone contract on there so that you can download and you can use it as a template. Feel free to take it and copy as much or as little as you want and create your own. And then in that process, if you kind of already, your kids already got a smartphone, maybe bring them into that and have them weigh in on stuff. Okay.
Yeah. You could say, okay, let's read through this and then talk about edits that you want to make.
Yeah, and let's come up with some of our own stuff. Maybe there's some unique things we need to add. Mm-hmm. Get your kid to have some ownership in this and narrate for them. It's for their good. Mm-hmm. You're starting to look at the data. We're starting to learn worldwide the amount of harm that's happening. And we love you too much, son, or we love you too much, daughter, to just keep going as we've always, kind of operated. So you do that, you bring them into the process, and you let there be kind of an editing period. So the way we did it is we kind of had this template. We might have tweaked it a little bit for the individual kid, but then I would give it to them and say, hey, look it over, read it over. If there's anything you want to change or edit, let me know. If there's anything you don't like and you don't think should be in there, give us your reasons for that. Mm-hmm. And we will be willing to listen to your reasoning. Mm-hmm. And let's hone this together and come to a point where we say, okay, we both will agree on this. And then you sign it in blood. So slit your wrist and then sign it in blood. And then we'll sign it and date it. And then we'll review it every, 3, 4, 5 months.
The blood part is not true, listener, just in case someone, maybe this is one of the first.
Ask the kids.
Oh my gosh. And I'm thinking too, both, the way we did it, both of us were part of this process, but I'm thinking about the single parent. And of course I was a single mom in the beginning of my journey into motherhood. So even as a single parent, you can do this smartphone contract for how things are when you're running things. That's right. And so take that power that you have and do it at least when they're at your house, kind of thing. So anyway, just to think about the single parents there, you can do this too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so here are a few of the things. We'll maybe cover 10. We have a list of 20 items on the smartphone contract. Some of it's, again, some humor, but this will give you an idea of the kind of things that we put on the contract that we want our kids to think about. And so number 1, okay, drum roll, please, Erin. Drum roll. The first thing that we put on this kid's smartphone contract was, it is mom and dad's phone. We bought it. We pay for the monthly service. We are loaning it to you. Aren't we the greatest parents?
So this one, depending on your circumstance, now we've talked about phones before, and I've made the claim that I think if kids are old enough to have a smartphone, they should buy it themselves. And I also think if your kids are old enough to have a smartphone, they should have some buy-in on paying the monthly thing. And I think, again, this was something we messed up on and learned later on was a really good idea, is to have them help pay for some of their, even if it's like, okay, you pay half and mom and dad will pay half or whatever. I think them having some buy-in, but still communicating, but the vast majority of kids who have phones, their parents bought it for them. And so this point would apply because it is your property. You're buying it for them. And you can it is kind of a, hey, I'm loaning it to you. I realize we're going to call it, Michael's phone because that's your name, but it actually property-wise does belong to us.
Yeah. And part of the challenge is that there are so many smartphone deals out there where you could actually get smartphones for free.
Oh, yeah.
So there's not even an opportunity for them to have buy-in.
There's no such thing as free. So,
but the monthly service
parents,
is going, at the very least, the parents are going to have that fee.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is, hey, even again, you may want to even rethink that part.
Yep.
And say, hey, we're going to have you pay for part of it, and we're going to have you pay for part of the monthly service.
Yep.
Either way, we've got some skin in the game on this.
Yeah.
We've got some investment, and it's actually a privilege. It's not a right, is what we're trying to communicate here. And so we want you to have the proper perspective of that thing. We might say, Michael's phone, it doesn't mean you actually own that. It doesn't mean that you're doing everything that you need to do to maintain that on your own. You need us in this process, and it's a healthy acknowledgement of that. And that, because that will then help shape expectations. It's not, okay, now this is mine and I can do whatever I want with it, and I can even prevent you from seeing it.
Yes.
Or checking out, what I'm doing on it.
Yeah, exactly. Which leads to our second point, which I think is one of the most important thing, parents, in navigating phones with your kids. And so you start with that, hey, it's not just your phone. You get to do whatever you want with it, because second point is We always know all the passwords, all the passcodes on the phone, on your email, on social media. We know it all. If you change your passwords, if for some reason you have to change your password, you let us know immediately, because no matter what, at any given time, we know your passcodes so that we can go on your phone, go on your computer, whatever the item is we're talking about, in this case, a smartphone, that we always know the passwords to all the apps on your phone. And so that we could get on and give accountability at any point.
Yeah. And I think the idea here is that your phone, your smartphone, is not an area of privacy. Mm-hmm. It's not like your bedroom when you're changing. It's not like when you got to use the restroom. Mm-hmm. Okay, you want privacy during those times? No problem. We'll give you have a right to privacy there. When it comes to your phone, when it comes to your kids' phones, we need to make sure we communicate to them there is no right to privacy with this thing. And if you have that expectation and you are going to fight us on that, then we're just not going to we're not going to give it to you. It's because it's not about privacy. It's about accountability. And the example we've always given to our kids is, hey, what if mom or what if dad asked for the password or the passcode to the other person's smartphone or email account or social media account? And let's say mom asked me and I said, no, I have a right to privacy. What do you think mom is going to suspect? That I'm hiding something, that I'm doing stuff that I shouldn't be doing. Mm-hmm. And so even as an adult, I, as dad, don't maintain a right to privacy when it comes to my smartphone, because I know I am a sinful human being and I need accountability. And so that's what we're trying to communicate here. Okay. Yeah. Number 3, if you want to download something, ask permission. If you want to buy something, pay up.
Yeah.
And that's the idea that, again, you don't get to do whatever you want. Mm-hmm. Hey, we want to be aware. In a sense, we want to be tracking what is on your phone, how much is on your phone.
Yeah.
And then there again, you have realizing this is a privilege, not a right.
Yeah, and this is particularly important, I think, when it comes to apps on the phone and how many apps your teen will have on their phone. And of course, if they're just downloading all these apps, this is just more and more things that we have to track as parents and figure out, well, what is this for? What is this for? And so the agreement is no new apps get put on the phone until we talk through it. And of course, with all of this, we're going to talk about, well, what happens if they do that? So there's consequences for that. And this is another reason why the phone contract is so valuable, because you can go back to it later and say, hey, remember you agreed that you wouldn't download a new app unless you showed me and I said, oh yeah, you want to download the Target app? Okay, fine. You want to download the Disneyland app? That's fine. Whatever it is, but that you run it by us first.
Yeah. Okay. Number 4, if it rings, answer it. It is a phone. Say hello. Use your manners. Do not ever ignore a phone call if the screen reads mom or dad. Not ever. And I'm pretty sure I took that like word for word from Janelle Burley Hoffman's original contract, because I thought that was so clever.
Yes.
And so important. It's like, because we know, I mean, there's some parents out there going, oh my gosh, I should have communicated this beforehand, because you're trying to call your kid and they're sending you to voicemail, they're ignoring you, you need to get in touch with them. And that's a little frustrating as a parent. Mildly. When you've given them this phone, you're paying for the service, you're trying to get a hold of them, and they're ghosting you.
Well, yeah, I think this has become, just thinking about our journey with our kids and their phones, I think this whole ghosting thing it's become more prevalent. Mm-hmm. And anyways, but I love this rule and I think it's so important, because we know that, most kids in our home, their phones are stuck to their hips, right? They see everything. And then you'll send a text, hey, when are you coming home? And an hour will go by and you'll hear nothing. And you're like, I know. You see every text that comes in that phone immediately. But the rule is, you don't get to ignore mom and dad. You can ignore your friends if you want. That's fine with me.
Yeah.
But you can't ignore mine.
That's right. And I think there's a goodness to that. Like you make mom and dad a priority.
Yeah.
Your family is a priority. You have special obligations to them. And you don't get to treat your friends better than your parents. And so I think that's important to communicate. Okay, number 5.
So this one, we have shut down the phone promptly at 10 p.m. every school night and every weekend at 11 p.m. So obviously we're talking about older kids here, but our rule was pretty much for the older teens in our home. Your phone gets shut off at 10. It's just that's just the rule. And of course, we had a charging station. I don't remember if we're going to talk about that in here, but the phone would get shut off and then it would get put in the charging station, which is in the living room where everyone's phones get charged. And so school night had a different time limit than weekend nights, which is pretty normal. And then we would even have rules on when then in the morning the phone could be turned back on. And so, of course, this rule was about shutting it off, but it also was helping them to set up boundaries, not only of when to turn it off, but also where to charge it up too.
Yeah. And gosh, 10 p.m. I mean, we might say now, hey, let's actually change that. Let's make that earlier. And again, this is where I think you're going to have to battle a little bit with kids, because if all their friends keep their phones on all night long and they're texting later at night, you're going to have to help your kid navigate that and be okay with the fact that they're not able to text right back when their friends, respond. And this might take a little bit of time to institute and for your kid to get used to it. Yeah. If they've already got a smartphone and they're already in some habits like this.
The great thing about establishing this habit, and listen, this was tough. This was one that, you feel borderline like you're nagging until it becomes a habit. And this one is probably one you'll have to set down consequences. Like, okay, if it's not plugged in by 10, tomorrow night it's plugged in at 9. So you can choose, but it's going to get earlier and earlier the more you fight this. Once you agree, on the time. But what you will notice, parents, is that when they plug their phones in, all of a sudden they are present in the home in a way that they weren't before. And when you have your 17-year-old plug in their phone, it's down for the night. Then all of a sudden they're sitting by you on the couch, or they're following you. Of course, you want to go to bed, but after 10 p.m. is when they want to talk. And now you've shut off talking with their friends, and they will talk to you more. And it's just one of those things that, again, I'm not saying it was easy for us to do, because it wasn't.
Yeah.
But when the habit is established, it's so great.
Well, and the advantage too is that if you don't want them to talk to you, you can say, hey, I'm going to give you a privilege tonight. You're going to get 3 extra hours of phone time. Because mom is just wiped out. She has nothing more to give emotionally. And so there's some great advantages.
Mom's tired and wants to go to bed. So you know what? You get an extra hour on your phone.
Okay, number 6, never take the phone into bed with you. Phones in bed aid phone addiction, hinders your sleep, and has other negative side effects. Social science says so, and so does common sense. All right, so a little humor there. But again, this goes with Jonathan Haidt's book. And one of the big harms that he says from technology is sleep deprivation.
The sleep thing, if your kids push against that, there is so much research, parents, that you can just say, oh, this is not my opinion. This is research. Now, what might happen is they might push back on you and say, well, then why do you take your phone to bed? And then, you might have to think about how you are sleep deprived. And it might be because of your phone too, because of course, phones affect us adults as well. But anyway, so yeah, that's a good no phone in bed. And there's so much research to back it up that we're on pretty solid ground with our kids with that one.
Yeah. I mean, there are lots of studies that draw out the correlation between taking your phone to bed as a teenager and the increase in the mental health struggles, like with anxiety, depression, those kind of things. Okay, let's do a couple more here. How about number 9? Do not use this technology to lie, fool, or deceive another human being. Do not involve yourself in conversations that are hurtful to others. Be a good friend first. Stay out of the crossfire.
This is a good rule for us adults, frankly, but don't lie on texting with your friends is basically what we're saying to them. Don't say you're somewhere where you're not. And then the whole saying things about other people on text threads that you don't want the other person to hear you say. Basically, you're talking behind someone's back. Or maybe you're having a private conversation, but just a warning to your kids. Now, I think all of our kids have had to learn this the hard way where they've, texted stuff or said, and then it's like they end up regretting that they put that actually in writing. But this is just a warning to them. Hey, when you text something out, it doesn't disappear. And if it appears on someone's phone, it's there.
Well, we've even had a kid, and we won't identify which kid.
So say they or it.
They, them, they/them.
No.
Okay.
This
kid used a social media account to post something that was embarrassing about one of their teachers.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? And then, so that was, of course, a mess for us. And I just want to share that because, like, we've been through some messes with our kids. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And that kid had to go publicly apologize to the teacher. Now, obviously, take that down, that post, and go apologize. And of course, there was some punishment involved with that as well. But then also, and part of that conversation was like, hey, gosh, you might think that, this is your phone and you're just doing this online or you're just texting this friend. But then when it escapes, so to speak, when it gets out there, it actually brings shame upon the family. And we think there's a healthy sense of considering how your actions play out for the rest of the family.
Yeah.
And we are so overly individualistic and narcissistic that a lot of kids growing up in this culture don't even think that way. But I think that is consistent with a healthy and a biblical view of how what you do impacts those around you, especially those who are closest to you.
Yeah.
And so giving them a little bit more of that why is really important.
And the whole texting lies and things like that, because we monitor our kids' phones. Of course, when they live at home, we have adult children now too. So obviously we're not monitoring our adult children's phones. They are on their own, but we've caught kids in lies from lies they've texted or whatever. And so part of it, I'm just saying, is this is just going to kind of be part of it. You can warn your kids, but most likely they're going to have to learn by failure and probably be embarrassed by something. I mean, it is just part of learning about this kind of thing. But it's so good if you can have this conversation before it's so good to warn, because then later on it might occur to them, oh yeah, this is actually what mom was talking about or trying to warn me against.
Well, hope there, with some kids, there will be some preemption. There are some of us who do listen to wisdom beforehand.
Yeah.
And there's some of us who often learn the hard way. Okay. But hey, you can at least, you'll at least be able to say, not I told you so, but hey, I share this stuff with you, and I shared this stuff with you really
as a warning
to protect you. And
Yeah.
Okay, so number 12 is no porn, and that's pretty self-explanatory, and you can add to that. But I want to hit number 13, and I think that'll be a good taste of the smartphone contract. But number 13 says turn it off, silence it, put it away in public, especially at family functions, in a restaurant, at the movies, or while speaking with another human being. And never, ever bring it to the dinner table. You are not a rude person. Do not allow the phone to change that. All right, this is the idea that we do not want that phone out at all times and in all places. And that goes for mom and dad, right? We're going to all try to live by this. Hey, when we do a family dinner over at Grandma and Grandpa's, we may even leave the phones in the car, not even bring them out, because we want to be present with one another. We want to enjoy the relationships. We want to communicate to other people that we care about you. And so we're not going to let ourselves be distracted when we have this rare moment to be face to face and enjoying each other. It's in a restaurant. For us, anytime there's a meal, like that is kind of sacred space for us. We know there's great fellowship and connection that happens over a meal. And so no phones at the dinner table.
Yeah. I mean, every place we list on this contract, the family functions, in a restaurant, at the movies, while speaking to other human beings, you could basically just change it and say, basically everywhere you see people using phones, we're not going to do that. Because this is just so common. And everyone listening, I know if I were sitting with you and saying, hey, the last time you were in a restaurant, were there people around you that were on their phone? And of course, we all know we've seen this. Maybe we've participated in it ourselves. But this is just, it's so common now that it will probably sound crazy to them, because if we list all these places, they're going to say, well, this is where everyone uses their phone. And we say, I know, but we're going to be different, because we know child, kid, whoever we know that it makes a difference to you when mom is looking at you and listening, and when mom has her phone in her hand and she's going, but I'm looking back and forth to my phone. And you know how you feel like mom's not listening when I do that? That's what we're going to try to stop doing. Mom's going to try to stop doing that. But we don't want you to even get in the habit of doing that.
Yeah. What did you say?
Oh my gosh.
I wasn't listening. I was looking up a Bible verse on my phone.
Oh, that makes it holy then.
No, yeah. And this, okay. So that's about half the smartphone contract. There's more there. Again, go to maventruth.com, go to our virtual training page, and you'll see the place where it says like my downloads. And again, we'll put the link in some of the descriptions here, but go there and you just have to put your first name, last name, email address, and then you can download a copy of the smartphone contract for yourself. Okay. And again, what we want to communicate always, especially with our older kids, we want to let them know, hey, why do we have these rules? Right. And, Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and 23 lay out the different fruits of the Spirit. And one of those fruits is self-control, right? The fruit of the Spirit is self-control. And that's what we're trying to do here. We want our kids to develop self-control. We don't want that thing, that phone, that social media platform to control them. We want them to control it. And that is why we have these kind of boundaries and these guidelines. And so that's the spirit behind it. Communicate that to your kids and help them know that you are setting up these kind of boundaries out of your deep love for them.
Maven exists to help the next generation know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty for the cause of Christ. To find out more, check out maventruth.com.